Please don't put me up there. The only place to go from there is down. Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Kira Wackett. Thanks for joining me for another video as we work to empower and equip you with the confidence and skills to write your own story so that you can live a life on purpose. Today we're talking about pedestals and how one of the worst things we can do is put people on them. One of the worst things we can do to ourselves and others is to put people on a pedestal. Now, when I say a pedestal, what I mean is to elevate someone as being above you or setting them as a person or in a given role or talent as the standard against which to measure all else. We see the person as having it all or doing it all and come to expect it or see it as the norm. This is the standard of being a fantastic actor, a great mom, the perfect boyfriend, the best kid, etc. They've reached some level of or are defining the standards of perfection others should chase. Now, there's some benefits to it, I suppose. It does give us something to work towards and hold ourselves accountable to. We use this as a metric to measure success. We use them as our role models to look up to and model our own actions and selves against. So if this allows us to work hard in the name of self-improvement, why is it a bad thing? Because humans can't be simplified into metrics of good or bad, right or wrong, perfect or not. Humans are complex, evolving, and changing. We're not designed to peak or to constantly move in a linear progression towards better, more advanced, or profound. The human experience consists of high highs, low lows, and everything in between. We're all across the board at any given moment in how we're doing or showing up. We're all excelling in some areas, growing in others, and stuck or avoidant of many. And as the various aspects of ourselves are in flux, there may be times we stumble, flop, or flail in any or all of our given roles. So when we put people on a pedestal, we take away their right to flop. We lose sight of their humanity and idealize this version of them that we come to expect. We expect them to be perfect at all times. They have to do the right thing, say the right thing, be what we need, and expect them to be at all times. Our sense of the world and our place in it becomes tied to this. And when they inevitably make a mistake, fail, or flail, which they will do because, again, that is part of the human experience, we're devastated. We get angry, we feel broken, let down, confused. It feels personal. It could be someone you've never met, like a celebrity or a partner. But once they've fallen, we lose hope, trust, and compassion. We've seen this a lot with famous people. Will Smith, Ellen DeGeneres, Aaron Rodgers, Tiger Woods, Johnny Depp. We come to expect them to live in and abide by a list of rules, values, and ideals, all while staying at the same level of success and performance. We know little to nothing about them as humans, and yet we shackle them to a set of standards they must adhere to. We see this with loved ones, too. We have a certain expectation of what a partner, friend, mom, etc. will do, and how they have to show up. And if those expectations aren't met every time, we're angry, resentful, and let down. But what do you mean? They're always there for me. They always know the right thing to say. They never forget about my birthday. The list goes on and on. The rules get buried in all or nothing ideals, and when something happens, it feels highly personal, and their misstep or failure can be the breaking point or ending in a relationship. I've done this in my relationship with my husband, Jordan, and with my mom in many different iterations over the years. I come to expect more from them than they can give or feel so alone in my own struggles of feeling like I have to do and be it all that when they underdeliver or screw up in some way, I assess a much bigger fallout than exists in reality. And we've seen this with ourselves. We condition ourselves to be and do it all for everyone else. We don't see ourselves as being on a pedestal or above in any sense of the word, but we have tasked ourselves with the expectations as such. Do it all, without fail, every single time. And when we inevitably make a mistake, let someone down, or screw it up, it feels like the entirety of ourselves is lost, rippling itself out to relationships and connections outside of us. All right, so we can see the negatives outweigh the very flimsy stance of the positives of doing this. So why do we keep doing it? Because we live in a world that forces us to scale worth and value against each other. We're always comparing ourselves, defining someone's level of worth and value, and assessing placement based on how we measure up against each other. This is called up and down comparison. Down comparison means comparing yourself to people you see as having less or doing worse than you. It can show up both as judgment, something like, oh, at least I'm not as bad as blank. This is something I did a lot in the early months of parenting, as it feels like the only way to find any sense of solid ground is to know that I'm not the worst parent. But it can also show up as a means of silencing our own pain. Oh, think about blank. Think about how hard things must be for them right now, or this situation beyond my control. So mine isn't that bad. I'm just being dramatic. Or get it together. You don't want people to think you're like blank, do you? Now, I do this one a lot, especially when I try to name how I'm feeling. It's like as soon as I start to give my pain space, this competing voice comes in, armed with every scenario of how others are worse off or how I have the skills to handle X, so I should. Down comparison leaves you hovering between a false sense of security and an incredible pressure to keep it together. The suffering of others gives you relief while allowing your shame to stay in the driver's seat. Now, up comparison is when you compare yourself to people you see as better than you or further along in some way. Statements such as, oh, I'm not as successful as blank, or I must be missing something, or I'm not as thin, tan, pretty, muscular, toned, built as blank, and I'll never get X, not with blank. How come I never get blank? What's wrong with me? Up comparison leaves you feeling like you're constantly lacking. You're always one step away from it, whatever it actually is. It's the source of imposter syndrome and is one of the biggest acts your shame depends on to keep its power. I think the biggest area that I struggle with is comparing my body to others and measuring my success in my business against others doing something similar. I compare our waves of influence and can minimize my own when the wave appears smaller than that of someone else's. This system of comparison leads us to dehumanize humans. We boil people down to content buckets of what they do and constantly give people points based on success and failure. It's like that one Black Mirror episode, Nosedive, where everyone's value is dependent on their rating, and they spend their entire lives trying to raise enough social capital to be seen as X or perceived as Y. Or the show The Good Place, where we come to see that the system they're using to measure good and bad, and hence which place you go after you die, good or bad, makes it so that no one, literally no one, can make it to the good place because it becomes impossible to be good enough. So what can we do about all this? For starters, we need to stop putting people on a pedestal. The human experience cannot be scaled. We're all aiming to become better versions of ourselves in our journey of life, which means that we fail, flail, flop, and flee along the way. I can't be the best version of myself if it feels like my value is dependent on never making a mistake. It's paralyzing. If I or someone else is looking to me to be right or have it all figured out, I almost certainly will fail because it takes me out of a space of mindfulness and presence. My life starts to be a response to the fear of losing it all versus an ability to live within and respond to it. Second, we need to practice radical acceptance. People will let us down, and we'll let them down. It's impossible to be everything for everyone all the time. So give yourself permission to let that go. Check out the show notes for a longer video on this topic and to explore the impact that it can have on our well-being when we embrace radical acceptance and stop trying to perform for others and embody a life in line with our values. Third, we need to get a clear understanding of the rulebook from which your shame is operating. Shame, or the threat of disconnection and not belonging, is the number one thing that propels us to scale and compare. Now, if you haven't done any work around this yet, I put a link in the show notes to a video I did on shame that you can dive a little deeper before thinking about this in a broader context. But the point is that we are just trying to make sense of this complex and abstract world. And if things are binary, we feel safer because there must be a right answer. But there isn't one. The only way to stop using pedestals is to clarify the rules that you've internalized that have made pedestals possible. And then finally, we need to broaden our view. We have to stop trying to boil the human experience down to what someone does or how they look. I'm a good person. I've done some amazing things for people in my life, and when I can, I like to give of myself to others. I've also flopped. I've hurt people intentionally and unintentionally. I've let people down, and I will again in the future. If I boil down my life to a list of wins and losses or good or bad things, I'd never make it to the good place. We need to shift from seeing people as content to seeing their life in context. As Everly and I say all the time, we're all just learning. Her job is not to be the perfect kid, it's just to be a kid. My job is not to be the perfect mom, it's just to be her mom. How different would life be if we let go of the scales and just embodied that position to explore and learn within ourselves, our roles, and the world? So as we wrap today, I want to invite you to consider someone in your life who you have put on a pedestal. How has that served you? Them? What would it be like to take them down? What can you take with you from this video to support you in this process? And of course, as you do this, please let me know if there are other ways that I can help you in this work. Be sure to take a look at the video notes to access all the resources that I mentioned throughout the video, including a link to the videos I mentioned on shame and radical acceptance. I've also included a few other videos about things like self in context versus content and some distress tolerance skills as well. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to save yourself the time and energy of having to check back for content and get an alert whenever there's new awesomeness to check out. And if you want to stay in the know on all of the happenings of Adversity Rising, plus get exclusive content that I don't share anywhere else, subscribe to my email list. I definitely put a link down in the show notes too. Thank you for being here with me today. And remember, you have the right to author your own story. So let's go get that pen back. See you next time.